All right, so it looks like President Trump has caught the Kung flu, as he so joyfully called it some months ago. Um, well, I don't know if that's some sort of karma for offending so many of us by calling it the Kung flu. Um, I assume it's not. I assume it's just bad practice on his and his perhaps his wife's part. Unfortunate for him. Um, and it's going to be a mixed bag for Asian Americans if there's a Biden presidency, which I think there is going to be now that this has happened. Mr. Trump is and will be worse than Mr. Biden on stopping the COVID-19 crisis, in the sense that he will not mandate uh, certain prohibitions like Mr. Biden might. Mr. Biden will more likely try to enforce, mask use and testing, and pay for testing and get that testing done, and perhaps stop kids from going to school. And this is the main reason why I may vote for Mr. Biden. I think Mr. Trump was good in the sense that he closed the borders pretty quickly. We know now, I suspected then, that the outbreak in Mexico was far worse than suspected. It is still far worse than is reported, as you can see in the tragedy that is occurring on the border between the United States and Mexico, the absolute tragedy. Um, I think Mr. Trump was good in that that private industry was friendly with him, and they got on board pretty quickly to cooperate and try to stop the crisis. Well, Mr. Trump has served his purpose, and now he's just a detriment to the efforts to stopping COVID-19. I think at this point, Mr. Biden will do a better job. Now, what's bad about Mr. Biden for Asian Americans is, of course, he's going to make it substantially harder for Asian Americans to get a job and or go to college because of the extreme form of affirmative action that he and Mr. Obama put into place during their terms in office. Yes, it just went from bad to just unbelievable for Asian Americans during that time period. Now it's you have to be kind of an Ivy League type student if you're an Asian in order to get into a pretty good state school. You have to perform much better than a white person, and a white person, of course, has to perform better than a black or a Hispanic person. That's how affirmative action works right now. I think that Asians should demand to be treated as equals to white people. If you don't want to take away any opportunities, well, the opportunities are being taken away from us. But if you don't want to, encroach upon the quotas or the set-asides, or their implicit set-asides for the blacks and Hispanics, then you should focus in on allowing Asians to be treated equal to whites, not equal to Hispanics and blacks. We don't want to have our standards lowered to that degree anyways. It really hampers our work ethic and the amount of time that an effort that we put into our studies and such. But the amount of time that we're being forced to put into our studies right now, in that we have to perform so much better than white people, is just insane, and is causing a lot of mental illness, some suicides. I'm sure it had to do with some suicides that of people that I knew. Anyhow, so that's the downside of Biden. He's going to make it much harder for us to get into college and get jobs in corporate America and other large private institutions, especially academia, which basically, from my information from talking to at least one professor, you have to have quite a bit more publications as an Asian PhD graduate than, say, a black PhD holder. You have to have quite a few more publications and achievements in order to get a decent position, at a university in America, because you're Asian. If you don't know about this because people can't talk about it. You can't talk about it because it'll get you in trouble with your employer, and there's lots of evidence for that. And that also, of course, is a big time problem at high-tech companies as well. But high-tech companies have made a lot of progress. They have lowered the number of Asian American hires over the past couple of years substantially, and increased whites and blacks and some Hispanic hiring as well. But a lot of progress in hiring blacks and whites, more blacks and whites, and quite a bit fewer Asians, according to CNBC. So great progress. Yeah, let's keep those Asians out. Let's see. So Biden will also be a high risk for putting us into another war, especially on the Asian continent. That's where pretty much 99% of the post-World War II American wars are fought, either in the Middle East or in the Far East or in Southeast Asia. I'm talking about the real wars where we commit American troops, large numbers, and do massive bombing campaigns like Mr. Biden conducted in Syria, killing unknown thousands or tens of thousands of innocent civilians for who knows what purpose. And of course, they also let Russia into Syria after saying that they were going to draw a red line. And of course, Russia has been the main enabler for the Syrian government to slaughter hundreds of thousands of Syrians. Without Russia, they wouldn't be able to do anything. But but Mr. Biden wouldn't even. Mr. Biden actually worked with Putin. Mr. Biden and Mr. Obama worked with Putin to coordinate they worked together to bomb certain areas of Syria, and they divided the Syrian country up into places where one country was bombing one place and the other country was bombing the other place, and both countries were bombing certain areas. And so they basically worked with Putin in destroying Syria. Mr. Trump got us out of Syria. That's not, that doesn't solve everything, of course. It just means that the American military is no longer bombing the hell out of Syria, and they can go bomb themselves if they want to. So that was one reason why, Mr. Trump's foreign policy might actually be quite a bit better than Mr. Biden's, just on that one thing alone. Now, Mr. Biden will increase the number of refugees allowed into the country. That's going to help all the refugees that may be trying to run out of Syria and Myanmar and other countries that have suffered civil wars in recent years. Those civil wars have largely died down for whatever reason. I don't know, if Mr. Trump had anything to do with it. Certainly in Syria, there's less bombing. And of course, there will be refugees coming in from Latin America. The definition of refugee will be expanded so that more women who have been beaten by their husbands will be allowed into America as domestic abuse and violence refugees. So that might be good news for refugees. And of course, the DACA, the DACA will be back in place. The people who came to the United States illegally, but as young children, will be allowed to gain citizenship with a Biden presidency. And that's going to be good news for a good number of Asians who have come here illegally, and their children, especially their children who came here illegally, or if they came here at a young age illegally. Unfortunately, that's going to encourage more Asian immigration across the Mexican border, and more people are going to die trying to get into the United States by crossing a border in which you have to go through an Olympic obstacle course of deserts and criminals. Criminals worse than the deserts, I believe. I mean, the deserts are only terrible during the hot months, right? The criminals are there, 12 months out of the year, and I'm sure there are probably tens of thousands of bodies buried along the U.S.-Mexican border, and I'm sure that thousands of them are Asians, as I mentioned in the previous video. All right, that's enough for today. I got to get going. Bye now.